And good morning, good afternoon to you, wherever you are. We have some 100 people with us today on another pedagogy seminar. And I love doing these because I learn a lot. After teaching a few years, I've been doing that for a few years. I'm still finding that I still get excited, especially when I listen to gifted, talented educators like Nukhet and Filip that we have today. You know, people ask me, you know, what makes a good teacher? I think a good teacher is someone who feels good just before they go into the classroom or into a Zoom video, perhaps, classroom. That means you are prepared, you know your material, you have a plan for the students, you thought about the pedagogy and so on. But also I feel good when I'm trying something new. I'm experimenting with a new approach to get the material across, or I have some new materials, or I have a new method for engaging students. So that's why I think these series of webinars that we're offering over the past 2 months and will continue to offer for many months to come on behalf of our cyber network, some 10 cybers across the United States, are valuable, and every time we do this, we get a lot of praise as well. And today we'd like to encourage you to listen and ask questions, and also give us some ideas for future sessions through the survey as well. So today we're going to talk about multimedia tools in teaching. I think they're relevant for face-to-face traditional classroom teaching, as well as online teaching, especially synchronous online teaching. And we couldn't have better speakers to cover that topic than Nukhet and Filip. So I'm really thrilled, Nukhet, to have you here with us, and Filip. I think you know a little bit about their background. I've known them for some time, especially Nukhet. Nukhet has been, they're both, first of all, outstanding educators, but very importantly, they're innovative, creative educators. They think a lot about pedagogy. They develop tools, and you'll see some of that today. So Nukhet, of course, has been a long-time educator, but worked in industry as well, in Turkey and in Europe, especially in marketing and communications. She is the director of the Al-Izzi communications consultancy based in London, and you'll hear about some of her teaching methodologies that she has put together for us to use. And Dr. Filip de Beule is, of course, comes from KU Leuven, Catholic University Leuven, and he similarly has been an innovator in the classroom and produced a lot of materials. And I think Nukhet and Filip, you both collaborated on an ERASMUS project over the past several years. And in fact, we'll see some of the fruits of that collaboration today. So we're very delighted to have you, and I'll turn the forum to you, Nukhet and Filip. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Hoca. It is a great honor to be here, and thank you ever so much for the kind introduction. We're really honored to be here today. And also special thanks to our participants for being here. I'm sure it will be a lovely session. We've been looking forward to it. As you all know, we will be talking about multimedia for synchronous online teaching in business studies, and especially in IB today, together with my colleague Filip de Beule. Very quickly, I would like to go over the topics that we will be covering together. Mostly, we will be talking about how to use multimedia for synchronous online teaching, rather than why we should be using multimedia. And in that respect, we will be sharing with you 2 standalone video case series. One is Brands Whispering, and the other one is Multinationals Whispering. I will, after a very short introduction, I will start talking about Brands Whispering, and we'll be sharing one video case from Brands Whispering series. Then Brands Whispering is actually a web and video-based ebook that was developed specifically for marketing, and it has been in use since 2016. Then I will leave the screen to Filip to talk about Multinationals Whispering, which is a new video case collection being produced as specifically for international business. And this is a part of our Erasmus Plus project. Filip is our project coordinator, and I take part in that project as a UK SME, as one of the partners. Today, all our aim is to be able to use these video cases and show how to use these video cases as part of online teaching. Before we go any further, just for the sake of clarity, I would like to mention what we mean by when we say multimedia learning. When we say multimedia learning, we mean learning from words and pictures, which I think is obvious, but as I said, just for the sake of clarity. And when we say pictures, it is actually, it could be still pictures, or it could be moving images, graphs, animations, commercials, everything that goes under it. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of different multimedia examples that are used for teaching purposes, from films to documentaries, to commercials, to executive videos. Today, as I said earlier, we will only be concentrating on standalone video cases as examples. Before introducing our video case, I would actually very briefly like to talk about our path and how we have actually developed Brands Whispering and the literature that we made use of. As you can imagine, we've made extensive use of Richard Mayer and colleagues' pioneering research in the area of psychology, educational psychology, starting with early 1990s. And we have been actually very fortunate because Mayer and colleagues are still continuing to produce new research findings, especially on current topics such as e-learning. At the end of the presentation, you will see a list of references that we thought actually among our participants, there could be colleagues who might be interested in producing their own video cases. Therefore, we've tried to include a reference list that you can maybe refer to if you want to. And we may use a lot of other material, as you can imagine, while putting together the video cases, while producing the video cases. Of those, of the literature we've made use of, actually we were able to isolate or identify three very important points while producing our video cases. One was, we said that since people learn better from words and pictures than words alone, we decided to end up with a video case, a standalone video case study, in order to be able to teach textbook material, not as a case, but as material. The second important point that we have identified, again based on Mayer and Moreno's work, they were talking about factors that need to be taken into consideration to be able to reduce the cognitive load while producing multimedia. They're talking about 9 tips, and in their research, from the very start, we've actually used their research findings and integrated their findings into our own video cases while producing the video cases. Last point was having a good narrative. All the research we read was talking about having a good narrative and linking that video case narrative into the curriculum, because the idea is not, the aim is not to teach the case, but the idea is to teach the curriculum and the textbook information. So whatever we did, we had to make sure that we have a good narrative linking it to the curriculum. So all these things actually showed us that simple is more in multimedia learning, and in all the video cases we have produced, we actually did stick to this motto very religiously. That brings me to Brands Whispering. I will very briefly talk a bit about Brands Whispering, what it is. As I mentioned earlier, it is a web and video-based ebook for teaching marketing and business studies. Each chapter in this book starts with real-life video cases, but these video cases are scripted by lecturers, knowing from the very start that they will be used as teaching material in the classroom. But in order to be able to have higher engagement, they're narrated by company executives in 20-minute videos comprised of 4 or 5 different parts. Based on, and all of these chapters are based on dilemma training. The executive comes up and talks about a problem that they faced and how they solved it. And our aim was to create a win-win situation both for the academia and the business world by producing a tool that would make learning experience much nicer for students and much more engaging for students and for lecturers, while teaching relevant material to them that they would be able to use in their business lives. Brands Whispering was developed in the classroom by myself, and it was first launched in March 2016 in Turkey. Currently, we have 14 video cases, and it is a free access website. And since over the last 4 years, it's been used extensively, and therefore we managed to collect a lot of anecdotal and empirical evidence. And all the evidence shows that it is working. If any of you is interested in the findings, like Google Analytics or other metrics, I would be more than happy to share them with you. The English versions of our video cases are being distributed by the Case Center, and at the moment we've got 9 video cases in the Case Center's collection in English with 29 accompanying teaching materials. And we are still expanding the collection. Very recently, we've finished one video case from Bridgestone, the international tire company, looking at the robotic process and automation and use of AI, artificial intelligence, in order to be able to increase their competitive advantage in the marketplace. So after having said that, I think now we can start having a look at our example, video case example. The example that I will be sharing today with you from Brands Whispering is Unilever's Axe case, looking into global marketing strategy. You will see a 7-minute clip taken from a 20-minute video, and you will see the Unilever deodorant category manager explaining how Axe was launched in Turkey with the international brand claim of female attraction. As you know, this was being used widely all around the world for quite a bit. But then after 2010, they realized that they had to move away from gender-specific stereotyping globally. And in the case, we will be seeing different shades of standardization and adaptation taken by Axe over a 30-year period with some tangible trade-offs in the market. In order to be able to show, to exhibit how we can actually use these video cases as a tool, for online teaching, we would like to suggest a 4-step approach, but this is just a suggestion. I'm sure our participants will be able to come up with other creative methods of using these, the video case. But after having tested it in a couple of different environments, this is something we would like to propose. We suggest to start the classes with some synchronous online teaching first, giving background information. This is again in order to be able to have a good narration and linking the video case to the curriculum and to the textbook. In order to be able to show what I mean by that, I'll just show a quick example. And for the example, I have used International Business, the New Realities textbook. You can use the textbooks that you're using, or if you're using articles, again, the same thing could be done. But just for the sake of example and simplicity, if we go over the example, Unilever's Axe video case is related to chapter 16 and the New Realities textbook, Marketing in the Global Firm. Again, in order to, just as an example for synchronous online teaching, you can refer to the textbook that you're using. For example, you can talk about the framework for marketing in the international firm, saying that in the video case, we will be looking at the inner circle of this framework, mostly concentrating on these 2 quadrants, the global branding and international marketing communication. The whole idea, as you can imagine, of this synchronous introduction is to be able to link the video case to the textbook and to guide students before they start watching the video case. Again, you can have a short synchronous session at the beginning or a long one. If you want, you can talk about, for example, standardization and adaptation as two concepts used within IB context. Or, as I said, I mean, it's of course, it's up to the lecturer. But before we start watching it, I would just, again, in order to be able to have more engagement, I feel that it's always a good idea to leave them with a question before they start watching the video case. So again, in order to be able to increase engagement. That brings us to the second step in this online teaching with video cases, and that would be watching the video itself. That could also be synchronous, as we will see today, or it could be asynchronous, again, according to your preferences. Students can watch it beforehand, or if they want to refer to it after the class, they can do it. So that it's got some sort of a flexibility. Now we'll see these again, and it's again also it's advisable to pause instead of just watching this video all at one go, to pause and have a discussion and then continue in order to have more lively class discussions. For the sake of simplicity and for the sake of time, we will not have any, of course, any discussions, but you'll watch these 4 clips one after another, and then we'll see the rest of it. Right, after the video, watching the video case, the third step that can be used in the classroom environment is asynchronous teaching, making use of the audio teaching notes. As part of Brand's Whispering series, we also supply audio teaching notes as part of the, as I said, teaching material. You can also have your own teaching materials. The few charts you will hear, I will not be talking, you will hear my voice, but they are pre-recorded teaching notes. Again, this, in order to be able to have some sort of a different approach, or also have a blend in the lecture, usually it works quite nicely. The last step is, again, after this asynchronous part, you can have a synchronous session, having a class discussion, making sure that maybe if you want, your students can have role-playing sessions in order to be able to have a livelier class discussion. Or if you want, you can again switch back to the textbook. For example, you can talk about things that are not covered in the video case, such as cost reduction advantages that we see in standardization, or complying with government regulations under adaptation. These are the points that are not touched upon in the video case. I think I will stop here and then leave the screen to Filip to talk about multinationals whispering.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon also from me. So I wanted to share with you indeed the project that Nukhet has already referred to. So using video cases for online IB teaching. So my name is Filip de Beule from the KU Leuven in Belgium. And this is ERASMUS Plus project, meaning that it's a European funded project together with some other university partners, as well as Nukhet's LEZ communication company. So as you can see, we have cases coming from 2 Eastern European countries and 2 Western European countries, meaning Slovenia and Poland on the one hand, and the UK and Belgium on the other hand. And so we also have 2 smaller countries, Belgium and Slovenia, as opposed to 2 bigger countries, Poland and the UK. This has been done on purpose, given that we wanted to have different backgrounds to companies, meaning that, as you all are well aware, of course, that the context where companies come from has an impact on its internationalization. That's why we felt in the setup of the project, it was important to have partners from the different European countries. As this is a European funded project, everything is open source. This means that all the video cases and the teaching materials will become available as they are developed. Since we've started 18 months ago, we are in the process of developing them, but they are still work in progress. So if you ask me, are they already available? The answer is unfortunately not yet. But everything will become available by September 2021, in line with the academic year in Europe, which everybody could use if they wanted to for the academic year 21-22. We've also set up some websites and social media accounts to make sure that the results can be shared. So whatever it is that you like, if you like traditional websites, as you can see, we have mnc-whispering.com. But of course, for the moment, as you might understand, there's nothing much to list yet. But we also have, obviously some Twitter account and some LinkedIn account where also the information will become available. And the videos will also become available on YouTube. So they will be readily available for lecturers to use all over the world. Now, why did we come up with this plan for online IP teaching using video cases? Because we see that more and more universities, faculties, and business schools obviously are offering more and more online classes. This was an ongoing trend before, but as we are all painfully aware, I guess by now, this has been warped because of the COVID-19 crisis. Because we've all been sitting at our desk talking to students online since a few months. And I must admit that I struggle myself using traditional materials. It's not very rich to do these online teaching or appropriate for online teaching. So that's why we think that the project that we're doing and the video cases that we're developing will be very useful in this respect. And especially also for newer generations of students, video is the way forward. So, I have some data here to show that when we look at the different generations, video is actually becoming increasingly important, especially this Generation Z, which has just started to hit our classrooms if you are in the undergraduate program. But of course is only getting started, meaning that the Generation Z cohort is not finished yet. And of course, for the next 10, 15, 20 years, they will be crowding our aulas. So when you look at what they want, they don't want text, they don't want to read, they don't want to write necessarily either. And so when you look at the result, for instance, because of COVID, you see that millennials focus much more, as you can see here, on online videos. And if you look at this for Generation Z, yeah, they are very much visually based. They have a video brain. So it's an important consideration to take into account when we develop teaching materials. So without further ado, I thought that I would just show you one video case and how I had anticipated using it. So I'm just going to show one video of 4 minutes, which I hope you will enjoy. I'm not going to talk through this video. I'm just going to show how indeed the case is narrated by a CEO and by the CTO upon questions that I ask through a script. So I've asked them scripted questions, and so they answer in line with the things that I want to demonstrate or show through this video case. This is a video case of an internationalization process of Born Global from a small company in Belgium. And so the question that I would ask, how would you internationalize or start internationalizing this company? So it's called IP, which is linked as well to the intellectual property as it is to the intellectual property that they have in the sanitary ware business. So it's literally not just IP of intellectual property, but also IP. So perhaps when looking at this video, you might ask yourself the question, which I would ask to students: how would you start internationalizing this company? Okay, so as you can see, this is only the first part of this video, of this series of videos on this company, where we use this problem-solving procedure. So, you know, you would ask students how they could conceive of internationalizing this company, and they could come up with different methodologies. You could say, oh, we have to do this ourselves, we have to develop our own products, or we could use strategic alliances with other companies, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the point is not that they get the answer right, of course, but that they just think about ways in which this company could internationalize, and the advantages and disadvantages of the various methods. Subsequently, what we then do is, as Nukhet also indicated, is develop, let's say, what is called knowledge clips, where we discuss what the theories or the models that are useful in this regard are and how they could be used. These knowledge clips, as you understand, are also videos which detail the theories or the models that you want to relate to the certain specific company, and how in a second instance they are linked, they can be linked to the video case. So how do they give an answer to the specific question? For instance, in this case, of course, we could talk about the Uppsala model or the internalization theory or the network model to this case study. Now, of course, we're not going to go into detail on the specifics of this case, given that it's an educational seminar and not a research seminar. But I just want to, of course, show to you that this is the, you know, the way in which information can be supplied to students afterwards to discuss what the company has done and what it means in terms of theory, in terms of models, in terms of frameworks. And so you see how they have done it over time, of course, which builds on the various cases, video case series that we developed, let's say 4 or 5 in this case. You know, one model that you could use, as indicated, is the Uppsala process model related to the initial model, or perhaps relating it to the later version of the 2009 model, or obviously also relating it to the Born Global model that is also available in literature. You know, what we just want to show, I guess, is that despite the fact that it might be a Born Global, you see that there is indeed this process of learning which makes the company increasingly international, increasingly able and willing also to do so. So this is just an example of how it could be used in class discussion. Now, the way that I use it, I typically have students read a chapter in a textbook beforehand, because I feel that they at least need to have some sort of theoretical or empirical background knowledge to try to answer these questions in class. It depends, of course, a little bit on who your students are, but my students are typically perhaps lacking in theories, so I force them to read something beforehand. And so I use this case synchronously, you could say, in class, using, for instance, Blackboard Collaborate, to create teams of students to come up with answers to this question. And so afterwards we can discuss in you know, a subsequent part their solutions, if you like, of what they came up with. But obviously I use Blackboard Collaborate, but you can also use Zoom or you know, Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, whatever it is that your university subscribes to. Also, I like to relate the theory to the case also in class, given that in my understanding of what students get out of a case, it's often not very easy for them to understand what the case actually tells them in terms of theory. So I discuss this with them in class, and of course they can also check the knowledge clips that are developed on this case afterwards to make sure that they at least understand the theory like they should, and what it actually means in terms of this video case. But obviously, you could also have students prepare part of the case study in advance and build on it in class. So you could play with different methods of delivery depending on the way that you prefer or the way that you are accustomed to. And the learning of theory could partially precede or even follow the case. So in this respect, I think that both methodologies work, meaning an inductive versus a deductive approach, starting from observation or starting from theory. I think that both of these methodologies are possible. And so it depends a little bit on your own liking, what it is that you choose. Okay, and with that, I will end my presentation and revert to the Q&A, if you like.
Thank you so much, Nukhet and Filip. You really broadened our minds and gave us new ideas. Video cases is not something I use, but I'm very excited about using them in the classroom. There's a lot of questions. I guess they mostly deal with the use in practice of video cases. Our colleague Arif Zaman asks, what is the appropriate type of students? I mean, does it matter whether you have undergraduate, graduate classes? And in this case, he's dealing with low-income students. So does that matter? George Carniero has a related question. He says, I have about 1 hour class. So is that a long enough period to do the video cases? Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience, about the ideal circumstances, types of classes, types of students that would lend video cases to be very worthwhile pedagogical tools.
One of us. Let me go first to answer Arif Zaman's question. As far as I know from my own personal experience, especially with students that have experiences, that have work experience, these cases work much better because they can relate it better due to their own work experiences. When it comes to low-paid workers and undergraduate students that are maybe older. Again, if they have, for mature students with low-income backgrounds, it could be a good idea, especially if they've got some work experience. As I said, they can relate to it better. But for digital technology, whether or not if they are not able to have access to internet at home, maybe it might be a good idea to use it within the class environment. Different countries, Kenya, Pakistan, in an IB class at university there. I can talk from Brand's Whispering experience. And I can say that, for example, our cases are quite popular in India and also in Pakistan. But apart from that, that's the old experience I have. I don't know what Filip would like to add to it.
Yeah, I think that in this respect, in terms of low-income backgrounds, I'm not sure if you mean access to the videos. So I have received many emails already from people from developing countries when my videos will be ready, because they will be open source, so free. So students do not have to pay anything for access. So I think that in that respect, it's important. In terms of where they come from, could of course have an impact on what they find interesting. But we have some cases, for instance, from Eastern Europe, also where contexts and institutions might be different, although they might not be similar to, let's say, Kenya or Pakistan or Jamaica. I do think that some of these contextual settings might be related by the lecturer, of course, to the case. So I think that that's an important realization to make. These cases do not run by themselves, right? I mean, you are still an educator. It is up to you as a lecturer to use them in proper ways. So it's up to you to clarify and elucidate what it could mean or what it should mean to certain students. Because I agree that sometimes this is not straightforward or forthcoming. And so it's true that you as a lecturer are a little bit, let's say, the intermediary, the in-between between the case and the students. Perhaps if I can already pick up on George's question about the effort it takes to change a regular PPT into knowledge clip, for instance? Well, I think that the most important aspect is the script writing. So when you typically do a power presentation in class, you know, we all know that we sometimes make it up as we go along. Our explanation is not always crystal clear and perfect at every occasion. So when you do this knowledge clip, obviously it needs to be, because it's going to hopefully last for some time, especially if it's you know, a certain theory or a certain framework. You're going to hopefully use this for quite some time. So it does require some sort of preparation to have the script writing for these knowledge clip in place. And so this might take, let's say, 75% of your time. When the script is ready and your slides are ready, then you can record them either in PowerPoint, and I can make available, you know, a procedure, if you like, on CIBER's website, how to do this. You can also use, of course, more advanced software that is available. For instance, a program like Camtasia, which my university subscribes to, but I can understand that some universities would not have this. But again, the typical PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint does have this available. I think that also Nukhet uses this extensively. And so to prepare this a knowledge clip will take you some time, especially the first one, admittedly. There is some learning going on, but it is quite steep. So once you have the knack of it, you've learned it, it will go quicker. But the first time you have to take into account at least a day or two to do this. It's going to take some time in the beginning.
Yeah.
If I may add,
you can,
if I may add just very quickly, I think the good side of it is that once it is done, you can use it many times over. Yes, you put a lot of effort maybe in order to be able to produce it in the first place, but then afterwards you can use it in multiple occasions.
Yeah, and if there is enough interest, we can actually schedule another session where you can talk about how you produce a new video case, because you have a lot of experience, both of you, on that. There's a question from Monica Semeniuk, more of a technical question about blending the video case into your learning management platform. She asks, can you play video during a synchronous class using Blackboard Collaborate? Yeah,
that's a good question, because if you use a PowerPoint presentation and you have to upload it in Blackboard Collaborate, it's true that the video disappears. But you can use the video in a different way. But then, of course, it's not like you have, let's say, a PowerPoint with a video included in it, and you have to show the video, let's say, separately. So it's true that using it in the PowerPoint is difficult in Blackboard Collaborate, but you can use it, let's say, separately, using, you know, just playing the video, let's say, using Blackboard Collaborate. Of course, coming back to the first question that we answered, I think that it's important to use also the streaming methodology in Blackboard, because otherwise people have to download it, for instance, and this takes a tremendous burden on the university system, but also on people's, on students' infrastructure. So it's better to use a streaming methodology than, you know, having this downloadable video, which is too big, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what about the use of transcripts? Our own colleague Murat Dakli uses video cases successfully, but he says his experience is that students also like to get hold of the transcripts and any data sources alone in a hard copy form. Is that your experience, and do you advise that?
Yes, I mean, in general, yes, especially lecturers also like to have transcripts in order to be able to work over them. In our case, we have actually, as part of teaching materials, we also supply the PDF versions of the video cases so that there is some written material to go over. Same with Multinationals Whispering, we will be including the transcripts of those video cases in a PDF format once they're finished. and they will again be freely accessible from multinational Whispering website.
Yeah, because it's important to realize that in a video, you sometimes see things or you hear something, but you can't remember exactly where it was at. And that's the advantage of also having transcripts, of having, let's say, a regular textual based video case next to the video case, because then you can quickly scan over the text and see what was said at what point. So it's easier for students to find information. It's true.
There's not a question on this, on assessment, but it comes to my mind. What has been your experience? I mean, how do you do the assessment of performance by students individually or as a team on video cases? Does it involve any complexity, or have you designed something different and new for assessment part?
It could be done in two different ways. One is lecturers can actually use their own usual way of assessing without really involving the information given in the case, because as I said earlier, our aim is not to teach the case itself, but to teach the textbook information. So lecturers, whatever way of assessing, they can stick to their usual way of assessing. Or else they can actually ask questions from the teaching notes, the audio teaching notes that I've mentioned, or from the knowledge clips that Filip mentioned. There could be certain exam questions driven based on those material that is produced.
Yeah, the thing that, coming from Belgium, as you know, we are quite strict also, and we also have to get students to act, because students typically, Flemish students are quite laid back, they sit and listen, they're not very active. For instance, when you form teams, they could supply you with an answer. Of course, this answer could be formative. You don't necessarily have to check every word that they've written about, for instance, relating back to my case, how would you internationalize this company the first time around, and in subsequent answers. But they do need to supply me with some sort of answer, and this answer is recorded formally. But of course, I do not really always evaluate it or assess it as such. It's more of a formative based assessment, let's say.
Yeah, let's say maybe in the few minutes we have left, in the design of a course, let's say a typical 14-week long semester course, is there an ideal number of video cases that you would incorporate into your teaching? Of course, the variety of teaching tools is always good. Blending many approaches, and video cases is one of them. So what has been your experience? Is there an ideal number, not too much, not too few, not too many?
I think it will depend on the lecture and the profile of the students, because some students, especially in my experience, especially MBAs, they really like cases in general and video cases these days. But maybe for undergraduates, it could be wiser to have maybe maximum 3 during the whole semester. But again, I think it really depends on the needs of the lecturer and the profile of the students. I think for me, it will be very hard to generalize. I don't know what Filip would say.
Yeah, well, I actually kind of like this methodology, given that in my experience, students, when they read a case, they haven't read it properly. They often, have to still look at the text during class. So I'm actually quite disappointed often. So I find that this combination of video with also having some text, which they perhaps could prepare already beforehand, works well. So I kind of actually like it. It doesn't mean that I have to spend an entire lecture on one video case, but I can use, for instance, only one part of it. I don't need to use the 4 parts or 5 parts of a video case. I could use one or another. For instance, I'm developing now one on Kipling, which is, the bags producer. One part is on production and, contract manufacturing, but another one is on marketing and sales, and a third one is on digital marketing. So if you only wanted to focus on one, you could select one rather than go through the motions of all of these parts. Yeah, that's my experience.
That's been excellent. That's been excellent. Thank you. A heartfelt thanks, Nukhet and Filip. You have really added another dimension to our teaching toolbox.
First, she talks about brand's launch campaign using the international global campaign.
ACTS was launched in Turkey in 1986, using our usual global ACTS launch campaign. The creative idea for this international campaign was based on women finding men who use ACTS more attractive. We have continued with this communication for quite some time. As Turkish society has changed over the years, with sex and sexuality becoming less of a taboo subject in Turkey, we also started using quite extreme creative executions of this same creative idea, which set us apart from our competitors.
The next one, she talks about their approach after 2010.
As gender equality gained more and more attention over the years, ACTS also felt the need to revisit its own communication strategy. As a result, ACTS decided to switch to a much softer communication style after 2010. Since our previous advertisements were often considered to have some sexist elements, we began to pay special attention to gender equality, staying away from gender-specific stereotyping in our communications. However, it was in 2017 that ACTS had the biggest shift in its communication strategy, taking the necessary steps to alter its global branding strategy and its consumer perception. This change was the end result of market research studies conducted with men. One such study, conducted with 3,500 men across 10 countries in 2017, showed that men were exposed to too many pressures from society. This pressure made them feel obliged to fit in with social norms. As a result, they felt they could not live the lives they wanted to live. Therefore, as a men's brand, we started asking ourselves how we could possibly help to ease this pressure, allowing men to feel free. Part 3, Men Cry Too campaign. As a result of all these market research studies, ACTS decided to change its slogan to Find Your Magic. What we wanted to say was that manhood has got nothing to do with being handsome or rich or athletic. Instead, we wanted to say that every man is attractive when they find their own magic and when they start acting like themselves. This creative idea had many different executions across different countries.
And the third part, she talks about the global campaign and the adaptations that they made for the Turkish market.
Find Your Magic campaign was executed in many different ways across the globe. When adapting the campaign for Turkey, we did not want to make a direct translation because we thought it would just not have the same effect in Turkish. That's why we did some research on the language used by our core target group, aiming to find something which would give the same message to them more directly. We observed that young men use an expression among themselves which can be translated into English as, "What is your thing?" Meaning, what is so special about you? Or, what makes you, you? So in our brand relaunch, we used, "What is your thing?" as our slogan. We also researched the likely pressures that Turkish men face in society and the taboos that they often come across. Then we asked ourselves how we could possibly overcome these barriers and what we could do to make them feel free. We spent a considerable amount of time studying these issues. At the end, we realized that all men were being brought up from a young age with the idea of being strong and staying strong. Being and staying strong is something that all men have experienced in their lives, and they can reflect on this concept very easily. For a man to cry or to show his emotions in front of others without hiding it is not considered to be acceptable behavior. On the contrary, it is believed to be a sign of weakness. We even have a well-known song with the words, "Men do not cry," we started asking ourselves how we could possibly act upon this and give them enough courage to be themselves, reflecting their true emotions. In the end, we collaborated with a well-known Turkish singer, Bonomo, and he rewrote the lyrics and adapted the song to be Men Do Cry.
Erkekler de ağlar, sev gör yaşını. Küçükken ağlardın, unuttun mu masum uslu? Erkekler de ağlar.
The last one is a local campaign that they devised only for Turkey.
It is rare to hear brands apologize to their own consumers, but we demonstrated this courage in 2018 and communicated a heartfelt apology to our customers. Over the previous year, we had been getting a lot of consumer complaints about lids breaking too easily. So in our campaign, we said, we heard your complaints about our lids, so we are changing them. Our sincere apologies if we have hurt your feelings. In Turkish, we are able to use a pun as well. The verb kırmak was used for both to hurt your feelings and to break. This pun also gave the message much more impact. It was a creative way of addressing both the functional and the emotional problem at the same time. We know that Twitter, especially, is an effective medium for receiving such consumer complaints and responding to them. We had been working on improved packaging for some time, and we were fortunate to have new caps along with our new bottles in 2018. We worked with Bonomo, where he read out loud some nasty tweets we received and answered them in a humorous way, whilst communicating the message about our new, improved packaging. This was a campaign where we merged the fun element with a functional message from the Axe brand. In the end, we were really proud of the campaign. It is
If we draw a scale, on one side lies total standardization, and at the opposite side lies total adaptation. Each and every company has to find the right mix for itself on the scale. Furthermore, the standardization adaptation mix can change for the same brand from one campaign to the other. It could be so that the same brand can use a totally standard campaign in one instance, and then in another campaign they may need to have more adaptations. Therefore, total standardization, total adaptation should be a case-by-case decision for brands after carefully considering all the pros and cons. Similarly, we see that Axe considering global campaigns one by one and making decisions accordingly. For Axe brand's launch in Turkey, an international campaign was used in 1980s. However, as we have seen in the case, 2017 Find Your Magic global campaign was adapted to Turkish as What Is Your Thing, and the whole campaign was created all over again with a new execution, but following the same communication strategy. Therefore, we can say that Find Your Magic campaign was closer to the total adaptation side on the scale. Then in the follow-up, Sorry If I Hurt Your Feelings campaign, a local campaign was produced to announce their new packaging, putting together rational and emotional functions together.
Oh, sorry.
I'm an electronic engineer by training. I was working at the University of Antwerp in the Center for Care Technology, focusing on adapting products for disabled people. A friend and I had a fun idea one evening when we were going out to create an interactive urinal. So we created a place to pee, a urinal equipped with sensors to detect in which direction the person was peeing, so they could play games on a screen. That was fun, but we soon ran into problems because the ceramic urinal got dirty and the sensor was incapable of properly detecting the direction. So purely out of love for technology, we started to look for a solution.
Look, there was a basic technology that we needed to develop into a useful product. So we wrote a technological grant proposal and submitted it to a government grant agency. This was a first validation, given that some experts were going to have a look at our submission and determine whether it was a viable idea. If approved, it would also allow for the necessary financial support to develop this basic technology into an effective product. So we worked almost 2 years perfecting the technology and making it into a product.
We got this idea to start up a business almost by accident. Both Jan and I saw the potential to do some wonderful things with it. We wrote this proposal for a government grant, which we got, and we subsequently carried out. That's really how this company started. We first started to develop a sensor for flushing a urinal, which was better than anything on the market. Better means that there are no false flushes, so we are water saving. It is also resistant to vandalism. So we focused on developing a better automatic flushing system for urinals and bring that to market. What this means is that our sensor can detect how dirty the urinal is and how much water is needed to flush. So we developed a sensor which could be attached to an existing urinal. We are the only ones that can detect when an individual starts and stops peeing. This is already a better product than the typical infrared product, which can only detect whether it is somebody in front and when he leaves, so it flushes. But our sensor detects whether the urinal has been used and how dirty it is, adapting the required water to flush. We started this company based on an idea and developed our own technology, so we do our own research and development. As you can see, we have our own lab where we test all electronics and ceramics. We design our own prints and layouts, but we outsource the production of the sensors. We are not a production company, so we subcontract the production to a trusted manufacturing company in Belgium, close to home. The production is designed that way that our sensors are molded into a resin, which is excellent against any liquids, but also an easy way to protect the product from copying.
In terms of sourcing, we have our own production right around the corner, so to speak. We don't do this ourselves. I don't see us doing this ourselves ever. This is not our strong suit. There are other companies that have far better expertise in this regard. We have a business model that is focused on developing the technology and researching and designing the product. But production is not something we will ever do. But we do want to keep this close to home. But obviously, the commercialization and internationalization still had to start.
Audio Jungle.